Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit that subscribe button if you're new so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. This episode is presented by Uber Eats. When football makes you hungry, order Uber Eats. I do every weekend. All right, time to look at this weekend's tastiest matchup in this week's Sunday Night Food Ball, brought to you by Uber Eats, a company I use all the time. Well, because games are played on Mondays, a couple of them, and Thursdays, you don't always get the greatest Sunday slate. But some of the games today were fantastic. Tampa Bay 38, walk-off field goal to win it over Seattle 35. It looked like young Brady and Peyton Manning. I don't remember a game like that. Darnold's always been a little more athletic than Baker, had a couple of all-timers. Baker just they couldn't stop him. You know, Seattle's defense has really shut down a lot of good offenses in the last couple of years, especially at the end of last year. Baker had no problem with it. Ibuka had no problem with it. I guess my takeaway from this game was, if these two met in the NFC Championship, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, it's an offensive league. I would not be shocked. I don't think tonight was a mirage. I think those are really good quarterbacks and really good teams full of excellent young players. And by the way, John Middlekauff, two of the best GMs. These rosters have dudes everywhere.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, at one point in time, Colin, it was 21-21. They were 39 of 45 for 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm like, but it just kept going on. I mean, they made play after play outside the construct of the play, right? Both of them scrambling around. We know Darnold. I mean, Baker now is a mobile, behind the line of scrimmage. They were fantastic. That was as entertaining of a game watching these two guys that have clearly resurrected their career now for a couple years. That was awesome. I mean, those guys, I know Sam, the lasting image will be him throwing the interception, but that was on Todd Bowles. Called an incredible blitz. You saw in the slow motion replay, it wasn't a bad pass. He got hit and the ball went in the wrong direction. Yeah. Both those guys couldn't miss. They felt like a Steph Curry, when every time he shot, you just think the ball is going to hit nothing but net with both quarterbacks. Ibuka, I mean, that draft pick, one thing I was taught a long time ago is, at the time they drafted him, you're like, well, they got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's coming back. They got Otten. They got multiple running backs. Why do they need a weapon? Because a position of strength can become a position of weakness with an injury or two. Look at the Chargers. Best offensive line in the league. Now you're looking like, who are these guys playing tackle for him? Injuries happen. I mean, this guy, I don't want to say saving their season, but, Godwin's been out, and then he comes back, and then Evans gets hurt, and this guy, find me a better rookie right now in the NFL than Emeka Egbuka. He's been fantastic.
Remember a couple years ago, of course you do, Atlanta drafted Bijan Robinson, the running back. Yeah. And I had a GM say, he's LaDainian Tomlinson, there's no flaw. Good teammate, good blocker, everything. Ibuka, because he wasn't like a 4-3 guy, doesn't go in the top 7 or 8. But I had an executive in the league say, he's a flawless receiver. Routes, teammate, toughness, catch, hands. He's like, there's just no flaw. But he'll drop because he's not huge, and he's not, he doesn't have a unicorn body type, and he's not a complete burner. He is just a great football player. I mean, he is open. He doesn't drop it. He runs great. He runs 10-year veteran routes. And Seattle's secondary is good. Seattle's defense is good. And they torched it today.
I would say the same thing about JSN. Also happened to be an Ohio State guy. I mean, I looking at the numbers right now, they combined for 15 catches, almost 300 yards, and multiple touchdowns. But both those guys are good examples, right? Neither of them would go in the top 10 because they're not quite big enough. They're more slot receivers. Like, no, they can do everything. They can play inside. They can play outside. You know what they do? They get open every single play. Elite players, elite character guys, like you said, elite teammates, and sometimes at wide receiver, right? And you've been on this for decades. The little diva-ish. These guys are rare breeds. I mean, these guys are wired like quarterbacks or safeties or
Well, you know why, John? I think a lot of it, John, is because when you are as big as DK Metcalf, he was that big in the 7th grade. He was the biggest, strongest kid, and everybody was in awe of him. Whereas Jackson Smith and Jigba, Mika Ibuka, they weren't the biggest kids. They weren't the fastest kids. They got there because they had a lot of talent, and they worked their ass off to become great receivers. And I think Mike Evans is the rare big, strong guy, but super humble, hardworking. Keenan Allen. But Keenan's not a burner either. A lot of times the Antonio Browns, the DK Metcalf, the guys that just have been gifted. The fastest kid in every class, Tyreek Hill, was probably the fastest kid in the 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. And, things come easy for you. So a lot of these great receivers, like Larry Fitzgerald, you can just see the work ethic. Like Puka Nacua, 5th-round guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look at the best receivers right now in the league. Puka, Amon-Ra St. Brown. These 2 rookies. It's a lot of guys that are talented, but you'd view them as classic overachievers. None of them are burners. None of them outside Mike Evans don't walk into a room and inspire awe. They're just dudes who got some genetic gifts, work super hard, and it's just like you go find a great attorney. He had smart parents. He didn't have dummies as parents, but the truth is he put the effort in because there's a million attorneys, right? You got to fight through it. So I just watched JSN and Ibuka, and I just look at, to me, you really have to be careful when drafting wide receivers. I mean, I saw another running back drop the ball at the goal line today, Arizona, Tennessee. Like, you watch Arizona, Tennessee today, there's talent on the field, but not just errors and fumbles. And Kyler Murray at one point left the game. I'm not even sure he got hit. Like, moods. And I just watched Tampa, and I watch Seattle, and I see great GMs and a lot of good character guys and a lot of tough guys and a lot of redemption stories. That was so much fun.
I also think it's if you're a defensive coach out there, like an assistant or a coordinator, it shows you, obviously these offensive coordinators have taken over the league, and rightfully so. The quarterback's really important, but Todd Bowles is an old school, like a safety from the 80s, right, who has become, he was Bruce Arians' right-hand man for a long time. He got some experience with the Jets. Like, he's a really good coach, and he's an excellent defensive coordinator. I've been saying for years, Mike McDonald is basically Kyle or Sean. He just happens to call defense. If he was an offensive coordinator, we would speak about him no differently than we do Kevin O'Connell.
That's right.
He's a defensive guy, and you saw today those guys have empowered their quarterback. Todd's probably one of the great blitz callers in league history. Spags has turned into one. Jim Johnson forever. It's a skill, and that call that won them the game, because that was a game. And even for a split second when they had tied the game, I went, Todd's going to allow them to go for 2, and it turned out it was just Baker holding it up, hoping they would give. I think Todd called, the field goal kicker on. But that's another thing. I mean, in a day and age when these field goals are kind of getting blocked, their field goal kicker in Tampa, I don't know if the guy's missed. I mean, he's kicked game winner after game winner, pretty nails. Also, when the guy hit the ground on essentially the game-winning run, probably could have got a couple more yards, but you talk about coaching. Clearly told him in the huddle, if you break this, it's an out-breaking run. If you get near the sideline, whether it's a first down or not, get to the ground, right? We have seen in college and the pros sometimes guys, like, they have a brain fart. They go out of bounds. They save the team a timeout. So it's just a high-level operation. I'm with you. That game, I think Seattle's going nowhere. I mean, the 49ers are 4-1, but half their team's on injured reserve. Tampa, it's Tampa 49er game next week. Tampa now has to fly. I mean, what time are they going to get out of there? 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time? They won't get home till the middle of the night. The 49ers have this long break. They're missing a ton of players. That's a huge win for them, though. I mean, that's a
Think
massive.
about this.
Go on the road to Seattle and
think about this.
Man.
Todd Bowles struggled with the Jets. Darnold, disaster with the Jets. Devontae Adams, disaster with the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, much better version of Aaron Rodgers. It's a cesspool, and we'll get into the Jets' loss today, which may have been like Rich Kotite level bad. Think about, people aren't only leaving the Jets and winning, they're flourishing. They lead their division. They're MVP candidates. That is a bad organization. I remember when Todd Bowles was with the Jets, and people would always rip him. He was a little like Carl Durrell, UCLA the first year. He didn't even know, he didn't have much of a persona on the sideline. He got lost within the sideline. You couldn't find him. But Todd was always so smart and so thoughtful, and he was just one of those guys, like, he didn't want, he was the opposite of Rex Ryan. Like, he didn't want any attention. But over the course of your life, if you do good work and you just keep your head down, a lot of people get fired. It doesn't mean anything. You'll be rewarded. Todd Bowles was too good not to succeed in this league.
Totally.
Same with Sam.
And look at, I think you brought up the two GMs. Mike's going to have a long career, came from the Ravens, but Todd, imagine if he would have got a second opportunity with the Carolina Panthers or some of these franchises. He got Jason Light, who anyone in the league will tell you is easily one of the best GMs. Just a high-level, humble guy who's seen it all, worked for everyone that mattered in the league over the last 20 years. And their team, they have had so many injuries, and you watch them play. I mean, offensively, they're missing their starting running back and their Hall of Fame wide receiver. And how many points did they just? I mean, they scored 38 points. I mean, that's on the road against Seattle.
In Seattle.
Wow. What a
Seattle is a Sam Darnold fumble and a Sam Darnold pick, and both times he either bumped into a teammate or had somebody bump into him, or Seattle could be an undefeated team. So this game is, Seattle's a really good team. They're the second youngest offense in the league. So if you're a Seahawk fan, you got some good years ahead. It's also, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't worry about drafting a quarterback if I'm Seattle. I think Darnold's still young. When he's still
totally.
When he was drafted by the Jets, he was 21. I think he's 27 or 28 now. You got 5 more peak years. Yeah,
to me, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about college. You look around the landscape of college football, it doesn't look like a lot of Joe Burrows coming into the league here. I would say this, though. Sometimes there's a win-win. Fit matters. I'm way better off as a podcaster than I was local radio when we had ties to the team. It's not Kubiak. They hire Kubiak and they get rid of Ryan Grubb. Well, Ty Simpson and Alabama are rolling, right? And Ryan Grubb's much better fit for college. And they get Kubiak, who's more of a run-heavy, great for Sam, and it's just worked out for both parties, right? Kubiak last year fired as well. Sometimes in football, you just get with the right person. Sam, now look at Sam now. We talk about the Jets for 3 straight years. Kyle embraces him. Purdy embraces him. Changes the way we talk about him. Then he gets his opportunity with Kevin. Now he's in Seattle. Just flourishing. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. He goes to Tampa. Gets around Jason Light, gets around Mike Evans, and just a more low-key environment. I've been there. I've never lived there like you, but it's just an easier place to just kind of ease into things. Yeah,
and Baker, the media in Tampa is more supportive. Baker's one of those guys that sometimes if he feels like he has to overcome the GM and the coach, that he tries too hard. He's very composed now. He's got a support system. He's happily married. Baker has nothing to prove. Everybody knows he's good. He's playing with a very controlled chip on his shoulder, but it's a good chip on his shoulder.
I agree.
It's like he doesn't have to prove anything. Everybody loves him in Tampa. And in Cleveland, he and Hugh Jackson battled, and then Freddie Kitchens, and then the GM, and then the media was on his ass because the Cleveland media is, it's bitter. It's and I don't blame them. Tampa's got trophies, they don't. So I think people, I know they find this hard to believe, but I root for young people to succeed. One of my favorite part of the volume is watching young people. At my age, you're young. I think it's great for Baker. It makes me very happy that he's kicking butt. That was this week's Sunday Night Foodball, brought to you by Uber Eats. When football makes you hungry, get game day deals on Uber Eats. I do every week. The official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. I just did. Okay, another game. So I had picked the Broncos on my Blazing 5. I think I went 2-3 today. By the way, I had the over on Arizona, Tennessee. It should have gone over in the second quarter. Those teams are horrific. I took the Broncos to beat Philadelphia. They did 21-17. It was like 2 games. For the record, all Philadelphia games are 2 games.
Yeah.
Just pick your half. So Philadelphia led 17-3. Bo Nix was stymied by Vic Fangio. But again, these are long games. And Philadelphia runs into these walls where they're just a punt factory, and they're very dependent on a big play over the top. Saquon's numbers have been reduced significantly, so you'll get your chance to beat Philadelphia because they'll go into a punt situation. Sure enough, we get to the fourth quarter, playing from behind, and Sean Payton's play calling. Bo Nix hit on a couple of big throws. They have some crevices in the run game, and they come back to win a game. So let's start with Philadelphia. John, they are incapable of playing a full, solid game of offense. They're either really impressive or awful. There's no in between. To me, it's got to be a coordinator. It's not personnel. The O-line has regressed badly. These guys are all in their prime, except Lane Johnson, who's older. They're all in their prime. To me, there's a coordinator issue.
Well, I thought Romo and Nance, especially Tony, mentioned it a couple times. Like, Sirianni's not the one under heat around here. It's this Kevin Petula that's his buddy for about 15 years. But they finally, through the first, 60, 70% of this game, they were feeding Devontae Smith. They hit A.J. Brown. They had an opportunity for a nail in the coffin moment in this game. It was 17-3. They clearly had schemed up this play to A.J. Brown, and he's wide open. And Jalen had hit a couple deep bombs throughout the game. So when he let it rip, you went, oh, this thing. Because he's when his deep ball's working, it looks great.
Ball game.
And it flew right over his head. And then they had to punt, and then it kind of flipped from there. Because 24-3, the game is over. Because like you said, Bo Nix was horrendous. I mean, I as someone that I bet on the Broncos to win the division, had high hopes for them. Like a lot of people, I bought into everything Sean Payton was saying. And you're watching him; he's missing these deep balls. They have big play schemes, and he missed them. And then I don't know if maybe he just kind of took a deep breath, but then he hit a couple plays to Sutton, hit some back shoulder throws.
Yep.
And obviously, the game-winning drive, he hit Sutton over the middle on a big third down. He used his feet a couple times, and Tony kept saying, it's almost like, if you're missing jump shots, get to the line, get fouled.
Yeah.
You're a really good athlete. And I think Fangio had said during the week, like, kind of reminds me of Baker Mayfield. And Tony's like, he's a way better athlete than Baker Mayfield. Like, he can really run.
Yes.
He's like, just run a little bit. But I think he wants to prove that he can throw. But his arm, in terms of accuracy, has just kind of been off. And then he just got into a rhythm. And obviously, then Philly just hit the skids. And you could tell, you could feel it on television. I've watched a lot of games there live. It got tight, and the whole building kind of went silent because they've seen this song and dance. And like you said, they can go through a quarter where they're clearly one of the most talented teams in the league, where they look horrendous. And you're just, in Fangio's defense, you can't, in this day and age with the rules, it's hard to have just 60 minutes of playing like 85 Bears. It doesn't work that way.
No, and they weren't very good. Again, when you get them into a 3rd and 4 or a 3rd and 5, and they can't do the tush push, they weren't very good on 3rd down. Once again,
did we even see the tush push today? I don't know if we did.
They were 2 and 9 on 3rd down, 45 yards rushing, huge time of possession. I mean, it felt like in the 4th quarter, Denver had the ball the entire 4th quarter. Yeah. And I wrote that down, 30 to 22-minute time disadvantage. But in the 4th quarter, Bo Nix had 2 drives for touchdowns, 15 points in 5.5 minutes. That was a big sideline throw to Cortland Sutton. Then there was that Zach Bond late hit. That kind of sealed it. I mean, at some point, Philadelphia, that last drive, John, they were reduced to begging for PI calls on the Hail Mary and the ball down to the 2-yard line. So you can kind of tell from their body language. They know they're struggling. And it's just like anything else in life. I don't care if it's a relationship or a football game or an offense. It gets into your head. And then you start doubting your play calling, and then you start forcing the ball to certain players. But I go back to Sirianni's not a scheme guy. He's more in the Dan Campbell, culture builder, alpha male. And so he's very dependent on who his OC is. Remember when he first got to Philly, as you know, he called plays. It was a disaster. Hands it off to Steichen, heater. Steichen leaves, Brian Johnson, disaster. Then he brings in Kellen Moore. They right the ship. Kellen exits. Now you got the new guy. So he's very dependent. Andy Reid's not. Shanahan's not. Although Shanahan's defense has been very dependent on the right coordinator. Saleh now is dealing with kids, and Fred Warner is outstanding. So I just look at Philly, and to me, it's one thing. You could argue that Saquon Barkley's got fatigue from all the carries, but when an offensive line regresses like it has, to me, that's coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, they've had injury too. I mean, Dickerson got hurt today.
Yep.
I just think,
again,
Jalen is, I think, clearly established himself as a pretty streaky player, right? He just happened to have 2 of the great games in Super Bowls. One of them he won, and he could easily be 2-0 against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and he's played fantastic in them. But through the course of a season, he's just a very, you don't know what you're getting series to series.
You don't.
And that's where it's like, Is there a huge drop off between Kellen Moore and this guy? Hard to tell. But like Kellen had been an offensive coordinator for a long time. He'd coached from Dak to Herbert. Like it just had way more experience. This guy never called plays in the NFL. He'd been a lifetime position coach. Even if he'd been around the Eagles the whole time and been on the staff, there's a big difference than giving suggestions and making the decisions. Right? I mean, that's why do the Eagles feel pretty good about their defense? I don't know. They have a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator who's 65 years old and been doing it for decades. So I also think they got an elephant in the room. Last year, Brandon Graham kind of let the cat out of the bag, and he tried to walk it back. But how often do you see a guy? He's 35 years old. Brandon Graham's got multiple kids. Like this guy isn't just an immature young guy saying something stupid. He knew what he was saying because it was the truth. He tried to walk it back. This year's gotten weird. They clearly tried to force feed him the ball, which I'd force feed him the ball too. But like it's not in the like you watch the Vikings with Justin Jefferson. He's just their best player, and they just give him the ball a lot because he's a great player. Jamar Chase. That's usually the A.J. Brown thing. Kind of it's weird because they got all these other options, but they know that he can be obviously a little fickle with his emotions.
Yeah.
And it's hard for him to hold them in because at this point in time, he's on like his fourth contract, so he's made an ungodly amount of money. He's a Super Bowl champ. He's an All-Pro. Like he's checked all the now it's just like he just wants the ball. He's just an emotional receiver.
What did Brandon? I remember Brandon Graham came out.
They don't like each other. Essentially, their relationship is fractured.
Jalen and AJ Brown.
Because part of when they traded for him was like these guys are really good buddies. They've known each other, and then something happened. And it was like, well, it's life. You get as you grow up, maybe your relationships aren't as tight, and you just deal with it. And they win the Super Bowl, whatever. But then this year, it feels like immediately it gets a little weird, and AJ brings it back to the surface. Can't even hide it. And part of it is Jalen, which is a good quality. He's like unemotional. Even today, like with the no time left on that final drive, it's just this guy's unfazed. I mean, sometimes I wish I had like his emotional stability.
Yeah.
I mean, I get angry just podcasting. He's just a flatliner. And I wonder sometimes in football, like some of our best quarterbacks can be a little emotional, and Jalen just has none.
Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. They're a great partner. October baseball is here, baby. The pressure's higher, the moments are bigger. One swing can change everything. Hard Rock Bet lets you get in on every pitch. So if you're a new customer, you place a $5 bet. If it hits, a $5 bet hits, you not only get your winnings, but also $150 in extra bonus bets. Plus, every day this week on Hard Rock Bet, you can get a profit boost for a playoff baseball parlay. There are new promos every day. Boost your same game parlay or your SGP max so your bet pays extra winnings. So if you want to see what everybody else is betting on tonight, who's going to homer, top picks or parlays across any sport, the Hard Rock Bet app literally shows you. Easy, cool. Another reason, download the Hard Rock Bet app. Takes you 90 seconds. Tap Discover, and you can see trending picks and parlays at any time. Download the Hard Rock Bet app, make your first deposit, have fun. Yeah, no, I mean, I was told this by somebody who would know that's very connected to that locker room. And they said Jalen's not the most popular Eagle. Players love emotional guys. I mean, I remember years ago, half the league thought Westbrook was better than Steph Curry. Steph Curry's married. He's quiet. He's not cool. His shoe looks like something a pharmacist would wear. Westbrook's cool. He's athletic. He's got the music. He's got the game. And Jalen's one of those guys. He's got an all-female like management team. He's not going to hire one of your buddies. He's not one of the guys. It's like the old Joe DiMaggio with the Yankees. It was like Joe DiMaggio just wasn't one of the guys. He was brilliant. Not everybody wants to go out and hit it and be wild every night. Jalen's very reserved, very mature, very focused, and he has a life beyond football. And I love guys like that. But and AJ, I get it. When you got a trophy and you got the bag, you're looking for legacy. He wants to be a Hall of Famer. So I kind of defend him that way,
And part of being an all-time great quarterback, because Jalen has the opportunity. He's already been to a couple Super Bowls. He's won one. Like he's going to be a starter for a long time. Is like by the end of Peyton and especially Tom, how could they relate to anybody? Yet You never have met anyone that has been in a locker room with Tom over the course of like the last decade of his career. It wasn't like, yeah, he was the easiest guy to deal with. He was great. Anything I needed, he was always, he could bow. He wasn't going out and drinking beers with him anymore or hanging, but he knew exactly how to be. And I've heard the same thing about Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers is a good example. Had like 7 kids with 3 years to go in his career. I know multiple people that played with him that said I would have run through a wall for his family, let alone the guy. Like there is a skill to be able to, and listen, when you get taught by Saban, like that doesn't really matter. You just kind of do what he says. Then you get to the NFL, and maybe it's just an attribute that Jalen's really going to have to focus on just moving forward because it's clearly not his personality. Which, listen, our personality is our personality, but at that position, especially if you're not going to be like Patrick Mahomes. How does Patrick Mahomes relate to an undrafted free agent rookie? He can't anymore. He's worth $500 million. But ask anyone with the Chiefs. He does. Right?
Yeah.
And Josh Allen now at this point, married to some Holly. Like that, you have to do that. Lamar Jackson, I've known people that have coached there that just said people love this guy in the locker room.
Yeah.
He's not hanging out with them all. So it is the onus is on the player at that position. You've said this forever. Not about any of the other positions. You can act like however you want as a corner or wide receiver, not a quarterback. So sometimes you got to go above and beyond and just kind of almost fake it, to be friends with a guy.
Yeah, and Jalen's pretty stoic. That's his personality. Okay, I'm reticent to talk about the Jets, but Dallas beats the Jets 37-22. I always judge.
I don't think it was that close either. When I turned the game off.
Felt like 47-3. It was awful. I mean, it was 23-3 at half, and it wasn't that close.
No.
So the best drive of the day for the Jets, I think, was the first one where they settled for a field goal. It was like 11 plays. My takeaway has always been when a coach is hired, what's his side of the ball like? Their defense is bad, and it's gotten worse every week, it feels like. The second half was a 7-on-7 drill. It looked like one of those 7-on-7 college drills where you take a really good quarterback, in high school or college, and he just boom, boom, boom. Dak was terrific. Dak's having his best year as a pro because he's having to carry a team. This isn't the Zeke top O-line in the league, Amari Cooper. That's not what this is. Without CeeDee Lamb, John, I'm not sure they have a definitive number 2. Their tight end's probably a 2 to a 3 on most teams. Their running backs are absolutely 2s. The O-line's still in a semi-rebuild. Tyler Smith's great. But this is not an elite head coach. It's not an elite O-line. It's not an elite roster. I've been blown away by Dak. I've never thought this highly of Dak. I think, again, like Jalen Hurts, mature, head down, not highly emotional, an adult. Do I want to pay him what I'm paying him? Well, you know what? Right now, Dak's worth his contract. He's worth it.
Yeah.
Could be the MVP.
I think what really puts the Jets into perspective is probably no one had a bigger question mark next to their name as a coach than Brian Schottenheimer. And you just said how you're defined as a coach, especially on a team that's not great. What does your side of the ball look like? Well, he's the offensive play caller, and they've been awesome all year long. And now they've lost one of the highest paid and best wide receivers in the league for several games. And like you said, George Pickens is a 2. And, Ferguson's solid. I mean, this isn't Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith walking through the door. And the offensive line is definitely a question mark. And the offense, listen, Brian Schottenheimer's kind of throwing it back to back in the day when he was declining head coaching interviews. Pretty good offensive coordinator. I kind of know what I'm doing. And I've been blown away. I mean, their team, they got the Packers got very lucky a week ago that ball didn't bounce in the air instead of hit the ground, or the Cowboys would be 3-1 right now? Or I guess they're 2-2. They'd be 3-2. Like they would be just good. Like there'd be no disputing. Like they're just a solid. Like could they win 9 games?
And also the weather in the Northeast and the North is beautiful. I was in Chicago over the week. And Chicago was like 80 degrees. So it's a good time to have a good quarterback in this league because you're not dealing, we're about 4 or 5 weeks out from it getting ugly. Dallas is built for good weather. They're built for domes. They don't have a number 1 receiver without CD, but they've got enough guys. It's funny. I was watching Justin Fields. He's never seen the field particularly well, and this coaching staff hasn't figured out that, listen, just use his legs. Just run him. Not 7-step drops don't work with him. I mean, multiple, and the Jets pass pro is awful. They can't pass protect at all. It's gotten worse. Again, the Jets are getting worse every week. I was reading a couple of the Jets beat reporters, and they're like, okay, I've covered 300 games. This is Rich Kotite. I mean, this is how bad this team is. And we're at week 5. I mean, it's not like they're everybody's beat up, but Justin Fields has had 3 defensive head coaches, and he's just not good enough. If you give him McVay, maybe he would have gotten a second decent contract. But he's just, he's the classic athlete, not a quarterback. So, but the fact that he was with Pittsburgh, who couldn't run the ball, struggled with their offensive line. But last year, I think he was he 4-2, or he had a pretty good record early, and you looked at Justin and you're like, oh, he could get another contract. Pittsburgh got rid of him. Pittsburgh went with old Aaron Rodgers. Because if you go back and if you remember Justin's numbers in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin replaced him with Russell Wilson. We were all like, Justin's actually, extrapolate those numbers out, he'd be like a 9-10 win quarterback. Well, Pittsburgh moves off him. It shows you the difference between a Steeler team last year that struggled offensively and how bad the coaching and the infrastructure is with the Jets, because Fields looks completely over his skis. Now it's time for this week's Redeem Team member, brought to you by Hulu's Chad Powers. This week it's Jerry Neuheisel, son of Rick. He's the OC for the UCLA Bruins. They hadn't led for 1 second all season entering Saturday's game against heavily favored Penn State. In Jerry's first game as a play caller, the Bruins scored 42 points, upset the Nittany Lions, and carried Neuheisel off the field. It was probably the biggest UCLA win in half a decade. Go Bruins. Chad Powers is now streaming with new episodes Tuesdays on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
Yeah, I mean, I get that maybe they were bidding against some other. I thought giving him 2 years and $40 million and 30 guaranteed based on his history was pretty insane. Like, to me, he felt like a 1 year, $7 million quarterback just to kind of get you through your year one as a coach. I do believe, though, they came in. Like, I understood extending Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a starter on any team. We've seen good wide receivers on shitty teams. It's hard to play when no one gets you the quarterback, gets you the ball. Sauce Gardner, if you just ask people around the league or just watch football, to me is living off a reputation from several years ago. And as a wise man told me in the league, said, you know what changed last year, John, why he had such a bad season? They started not allowing him to just commit pass interference every play. He is not Deion Sanders or Revis in terms of a foot athlete. He is a long corner, like Richard Sherman. Well, Richard Sherman is a physical player like a linebacker, one of the great hitting and tackling corners in league history. Yeah. Sauce doesn't want to tackle and has elite ball skills. Sauce does not either. They gave him $100 million, Colin. They had never even coached him. So they came in, they had some sexy names, and now you're kind of stuck with a guy like that, not making any plays, does nothing for your team. It's not like he's a winning player. And there's no there's not a savior coming in this draft, it looks like. You're an unwatchable team. Like that's when the Saints, they've been bad. I've watched the Saints 3 or 4 times. They're actually kind of entertaining.
Spencer Rattler is kind of getting there.
Kellen Moore can call some plays. You're like, okay, listen, we're not that talented. At least our head coach brings something to the table. Aaron Glenn, I have a lot of respect for what he did last year with the Lions. Yeah. I would say this about the Jets, and I'd even throw the Raiders in there with my guy Spytek and Pete Carroll. There are a couple franchises that are just hard to overcome. They've been taking down everyone for a long time now. And maybe these guys, Brady and kind of that crew in Vegas, it is not an overnight fix. And there is an ethos and just like a culture that is permeated through the building and the walls. And the Jets and the Raiders, it's hard to shake because guys leave you, they excel. You bring guys in, they get worse. You bring incredible coaches or young energy, it still looks the same. And I'm watching the Jets and the Raiders, and I just go, God, these teams are they're terrible. I mean, they feel like they have no hope. The rosters are bad. The Cowboys, I mean, when Dak Prescott's looking like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning in his prime against you with no CeeDee Lamb, I mean, this is a pretty low point. I mean, and the Giants now feels like they're not very good again. Dark gave them a little hope. It's like, God, the New York teams and the Yankees are getting killed. You better hope Mike Brown coach up the Knicks, Yeah,
it's interesting. The one franchise in New York that isn't impatient, that doesn't blow it up, is the Yankees. It's also easily the most successful franchise, and all they get is heat from their fans. And, Cashman's been there 30 years. I think 8 years for Aaron Boone. But their take is, the upstairs sets the lineup. It's analytics. The Yankees don't make moves. They're patient to a fault. Yeah. The truth is, if Garrett Cole was healthy, they'd have a chance to get, to the American League Championship Series. I'm not sure they have the pitching. They've gotten boxed in back-to-back games by Toronto.
Jeez, killed.
Yeah. So, New York is its own animal. I want to talk about the Colts beat the Raiders. This was my favorite pick of the week. Got this one, 40-6. Colts beat the Raiders. I will die on this hill. I think the Colts have a top 6 roster in the league. I love their offensive line. I think they have stars. I don't care if it's Pittman, Warren, Jonathan Taylor's outstanding. He just doesn't, he's not Saquon Barkley is, you get these running backs who stylistically they pop. And Jonathan Taylor was always just a speed guy out of college. He wasn't shifty. He was like track guy, just behind that offensive line, I swear to God, John, it's just 3 yards before he gets touched. I don't know what Pete Carroll's fascination. That's 9 picks and 6 games for Geno in his last 6 games. I think it's something like that. 6 touchdowns and 9 picks this year. 6 touchdowns, 9 picks for Geno. That is the Geno comeback story's over. It's the opposite of what Pete Carroll likes. He is so much about clean football, run the game, run the ball. I think the Raiders are just a big work in progress. When Colton Miller gets hurt, O-line, it's just one of the worst 5 in the league. But you look at the Colts. I mean, the Chiefs will probably beat the Jags tomorrow. I don't know. I look at the Colts like I look at Tampa. Now, Baker's better than Daniel Jones. But coaches who some people started doubting, like Steichen with Anthony Richardson. Oh, Steichen's lost his magic. But that Tampa roster, when healthy, that Colts roster, I know they're a middle of the country, flyover country. I think the Colts are good. I really do.
DJ had a touchdown where he rolled out, and everyone's going to be, it's the Raiders. It's not about the opponent, where he was just on the move, guy in the back of the end zone. He split it through a defender. I've always compared him to Alex Smith. He's got a better arm than Alex Smith.
No question.
His arm actually is better than I thought. And sometimes it just takes you with a credible offense to really get to see that arm talent. It's pretty, you watch Baker and Sam, you're like, these guys can sling it. You're watching Daniel Jones in 2025. I would have said forever he's got an average to below average arm. His arm is more than strong enough. He's not Josh Allen, but he's heaving that thing in there. And
he's a big guy.
To me, the Warren pick looks fantastic. He has been easily one of the best rookies in the league. Obviously the Raiders are bad, but I would say the Colts. I think the Colts can win a playoff game. I think the Colts can be a factor in the AFC, especially now. It's definitely opening more up, right?
They are the most efficient offense in the league. They went 8 for 10 on third down, so they become an incredibly efficient offense. John, they had the ball only 26 minutes. They scored 40 points. No offense in this league is more efficient. I know going into the Rams game, Daniel Jones is 20 of 29. So it's like we look at Baker and Sam. It's really the story. This year is the story of redemption. Baker leads his division. Sam's great. Daniel Jones. I
do wonder if you got Shane Steichen over cocktails and Ballard, if they knew, when they truly, was it a week into training camp? This isn't even a close competition. Did they know before training camp, just based on OTAs?
I think they did. I think they did. I was talking to Steve Keim about a year ago, and we were out, and I said, what do you make of Anthony Richardson? And Steve said, man, Colin, he said, you got to be able to hit those layups in the flat. And he said, I looked at some of the film, and he's like, if anybody can do it, Shane Steichen can fix it. But Keim and I were talking about it, and he just said, if you have to work on that stuff, if you're spending a lot of practice time on that stuff, it's really hard. And because, generally with Baker, you're dealing with high-end stuff. Baker solved all that stuff. With Baker, it can be concepts and defense. You're not worried about the layup stuff. So, and then I talked to somebody else, an active GM in the league, and he echoed what Steve Keim told me. It's just like, gosh, if you're struggling with the underneath stuff, you're spending a lot of time on that. You have to spend so much time on that to get that right. But then you're not really, that's elementary stuff in the league. You're not dealing with the second and third and fourth level stuff. You also can't call a game that you want to call in the NFL. I remember I got off the phone with this GM in the league, and my take was, well, God, if I don't trust a guy to throw it downfield, I can't call the same game. I just eliminated 35% of the playbook. So I think with Daniel Jones, you can use the whole playbook. That's the difference.
Isn't it crazy, the redemption season, even watching Carson Wentz with Kevin O'Connell, it's like, he actually doesn't look that terrible. I mean, it's like this, the power of some of these offensive coordinators that also, because what do usually offensive coordinators or head coaches have? Pretty good skill guys around them, right? Kevin O'Connell, they got a pretty loaded roster. Shane Steichen, they've invested some picks and some money into the offensive skill guys, right? You play for Shanahan, you play for McVay, you play for LaFleur. Like, they emphasize that side of the ball in terms of people, the wide receivers, the running backs, the tight ends. These guys look a lot better than some of the franchise that failed them. I mean, you go back to the Giants. I mean, Daniel Jones was horrendous. I get asked a lot, like, if Daniel Jones, is in the MVP conversation, this team wins 13 or 14 games. Clearly the Giants aren't. What were they going to win? 5 games? And listen, it was time for a breakup. I didn't blame them. It was not working. But this is one of those things, like, ultimately Saquon Barkley is much better with a great offensive line. But if I'm, the Giants ownership, I pay my head coach, who's the play caller. I know he's kind of bounced around being the play caller, but he's an offensive guy, to fix that position. And this guy, we had this guy. Hell, we paid this guy. And then he goes to another offensive coordinator as the head coach. And looks like Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield. How's that possible? How can that happen? This guy is going to get, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are going to get contract extensions, I would imagine, before the playoffs start. It's going that well.
Well, so the other thing is, and we have, it's the elephant in the room. Sports fans love a comeback, so the underdog that kind of defies the odds. So that's the story of Green River Whiskey. In 1918, their distillery burned to the ground, 40,000 barrels of bourbon gone. Most would have quit, and they rebuilt from the ground up on the original site in Owensboro, Kentucky, and today they're producing some of the great bourbons and rye whiskeys in the game. Kentucky Straight Bourbon, a wheated, foolproof rye. It's a lineup built on resilience. So if you love a good comeback in sports or in your glass, Green River's got you covered. Head on over to greenriverwhiskey.com to learn more. Try some for yourself. And always, please drink responsibly. There's been multiple reports that have surfaced the last couple of years. Chris Ballard in the front office, Jim Irsay had relapsed into some really problematic behavior. And this stuff, I think Chris Ballard will never ever say it. Maybe to his wife. I think it was exhausting and energy sapping for the entire organization to deal with an owner who was beloved in the community, but was going through some really tumultuous personal times. And I said this at the time when he passed away, 2 things can be true. You can love somebody and be brokenhearted, but you also think to yourself, it'll be a less chaotic organization upstairs. And I think Ballard's really good. I think Steichen's really good. the last several years, go look at the last 2 or 3 drafts. They've had great players in the first round fall to them. Like remember the draft where I think Ballard got the first defensive player taken in the draft, the UCLA edge, who was the best pass rusher in the league, fell to him at like 15th, and he was laughing about it. They had a camera on him. He's like, we just got the best pass rusher. We didn't even move up. And then Warren, is available. So I think my take is problems are always upstairs. Remember when The Athletic, the subscription service, about 2 weeks ago, I talked about it on my show. They had the best 10 front offices in the league based on GMs and coaches, and it might as well have been the top 10 teams in the league. Yeah. This college football? This is why Belichick's struggling. College football is about talent, recruiting. If you can recruit, you can hide a lot of problems. The NFL is about upstairs and a great scheming coach. Solid's a very good schemer. Suddenly, Fred Warner and a bunch of dudes look great. So I think if you have Ballard upstairs and Shane Steichen scheming, and the coach and the quarterback is capable, you're going to win the AFC South. It's not a very good division.
Yeah, I also think everyone in the NFL goes through adversity. You get an injury, something happens. How coaches I've saw get sick, get cancer. Who knows? All sorts of crazy stuff happens. I would say Andrew Luck randomly retiring when no one saw it coming is one of the most traumatic events. Just like in life, there are certain things that are easier to come back from. That event had ripple effects on the franchise for a long, long time, and most teams could not have overcome that. And they've tried. They actually they have not been embarrassing, but they finally found, like, they've been band-aiding it, Phillip Rivers to Matt Ryan, and they finally found a younger player. The thing with Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan, like, it was over for those guys, right? And then they took this swing on Anthony Richardson, who's just not a good player, right? Yeah. So they got Daniel Jones, who I think we're honestly on one of the great runs. I remember being around the Raiders a lot, and they talked about Jim Plunkett. I mean, one of the craziest redemption stories of all time, right? High pick, Heisman Trophy, and then wins the Super Bowl. But that, for a long period of time, didn't really happen in the NFL. Nope. It was a lot of Peyton Mannings and Eli Mannings and Roethlisbergers, like Phillip Rivers. You were drafted high, Carson Palmer, and you were good. And if you stunk, you were just bad. And now we got these guys who were just really bad, who are just thriving. And we got these mid-round to late-round picks kicking ass and taking names. I mean, look at Mac Jones, who just kind of all of a sudden, this guy's terrible, to just had one of the great Thursday night performances in league history. So it's just it's a great time to be a quarterback with some talent, because you're going to get opportunity.
By the way, the Saints beat the Giants 26-14. Jackson Dart was 26-40, a couple hundred yards. Giants' first two drives were really good. And then, and I don't think I've ever seen this, they had 5 straight possessions with turnovers. Yep. And the Saints went on a 23 unanswered point run. I wrote a couple things. Now, Malik Neighbors wasn't there. Tyrone Tracy, the running back for the Giants. So they're not great to begin with. They didn't have a lot of their juice. And next week, the Giants now play Thursday against the Eagles off a loss. So, they're 1-4 is 1-5. But I watched Spencer Rattler. And I've been doing this year. I've been watching, because it's supposed to be a strong quarterback draft. We'll get into that. It's not as strong as we thought. But Rattler was good on third down, 20 of 30. He's always had a nice arm. That's never been a question. I don't know if it's a power arm, but I would say he's kind of an easy thrower. But I watched Spencer Rattler today, and I'm not sure the Saints draft a quarterback. I'm not sure they do. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, they just drafted the guy that's like 40 years old, the rookie, and Spencer Rattler beat him out pretty easily. Yep. I would imagine.
Easily.
So listen, I've been really impressed with the Saints on offense. They are good on offense.
Yeah,
it's defensively they don't have much talent, and most weeks they have no chance to stop anybody. Like you said, I mean, they caused 5 turnovers. Some of them are like punched out of Scadaboo's hands. Like, that's not happening most weeks. But their offense has not been the problem. I don't think. Listen, I watched a lot of football on Saturday most weeks, like you do. I do not see a lot of saviors coming into the league next year. So who knows? I mean, this draft is pretty open. It doesn't feel even like that potent of a draft. So I think a lot of these quarterbacks that are on bad teams are going to continue to get to play. And if you need an answer at that spot, you're in some trouble, because you better hope to hit, strike oil in the 3rd or 4th round with one of these random guys. But for every Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy, most guys are like Tyler Shuck. They get drafted in the 2nd, 3rd round. You never see anything of them.
Yeah.
The history of the league is not a bunch of 3rd rounders thriving in the NFL.
No, it's people always, I've heard this before. Oh, it's such a coin flip. No, your best offensive tackles, your best defensive tackles, your best quarterbacks are all overwhelmingly 1st-round guys. I mean, Jalen Hurts, Drew Brees, there are occasional guys that drop to the top of the 2nd. But I mean, there's a reason we all know what round Tom Brady was drafted in. There's a reason we know that Dak went in the 4th round. Like, there's a reason, because it didn't happen very often. There's a couple of college things I wanted to talk about with you, because, again, I didn't think one of the downsides to the NFL being quarterback reliant, if you don't have a quarterback, you're out of it by week 5. I mean, the Jets and the Giants are out of it. It's over. They can't compete. The other thing is, when you have so many games, like, I think these dual Monday Night Football games are ridiculous. Nobody likes it. Well, it also takes another game out of the Sunday rotation. So, again, if you'd have put Rams-Niners today in a late window, along with the Seahawks-Buccaneers, you'd have had one of the great late windows in recent memory, right?
What's the business sense behind the doubleheader? Because they're clearly doing it. Are they just trying
I
to
don't
get
get it. Now,
to
Amazon just paid $1 billion for very few games, so I get that. I understand Amazon, you want to get a streamer in, but it takes they usually put a pretty good game up. So Amazon gives you that money. Amazon's like, we'll do it, but we want winning teams. Remember when they first started Thursdays, and the Thursday games mostly sucked? Yeah. And then kind of quietly, Fox did it for about a year. Remember that? Fox did it for a very brief time, got outbid eventually by Amazon, but Fox did it for about a year, and the games got better. And, the reason I think it got better under Fox, this is my guess, is I watched the Fox schedule for about a year. I forget how long Fox had it. It wasn't very long. But you started seeing division matchups, which are easier because the teams don't have to travel as far, and they're built-in rivalries. So Ravens-Steelers or Bucs-Falcons. It's not as disruptive. The
Rams-Niners.
Right. So then the NFL looked at it and thought, this whole thing we did on Fox, it kind of makes sense. Like, don't have multiple time zone differences on these short week games, which is how it started. And then Amazon's like, okay, we like the way you're doing it now, and we want more good games. So they're putting pretty interesting games. If you go to these Thursday games, there's always at least one star quarterback. So you take Matt Stafford out of Sunday. Well, okay, Matt Stafford's great. And, then you do a dual Monday. Okay, well, you take really good quarterbacks out of Sunday. So, today, there were 3 or 4 games I wanted to watch. And, and there was half of the lineup. Minnesota, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit, Arizona, Tennessee. Either it was a mismatch or it's lopsided. So I don't like it at all. I thought Saturday was once again fascinating. So there was always this kind of feeling, the SEC would always say, hey, man, the reason this is such a great conference, anybody can beat anybody. Well, UCLA beat Penn State 42-37. So I don't hear SEC fans saying, they look at the Big Ten as weakness. Well, you used to always pat yourself on the back because the 8 seed would beat the number 2 seed. And my takeaway was I've always been a James Franklin supporter, but this is one of the things that makes the Big Ten tough. In the SEC, everybody's in the same time zone. You're asking Oregon to go all the way cross country. And now you're asking Penn State to go all the way cross country. I watched Washington play Maryland. Okay, Washington was asleep in the first half. Didn't wake up until the late third quarter, and then the offense looked great. But they just got beat up by Ohio State, had to travel 3,000 miles. And then I'm watching UCLA and Penn State. Penn State didn't wake up until midway through the third. You're asking these college kids, you're traveling cross country. You don't travel nearly as well as the NFL does. You don't stay in the kind of hotels. You don't bring in 26 trainers. The NFL now travels, John, as you know. It's like staying at the Ritz-Carlton, going to a spa 6 hours a day. So I think what makes the Big Ten problematic for these coastal teams is you're going to get some of these games in the middle of the season off a huge Oregon game. Penn State cross country was just no juice. That was my take on it. Football season's here, and if you want to go to an NFL or college football game, Game Time is the place for you. The Game Time app just gives you the advantage back to you, the fans. It's a hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in a few taps. I love it. Easy to use. The Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price, 100%. So they even let you preview your seat on the app. That's special. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay every time. Take the guesswork out of buying professional football tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account. If you use the code Colin, COLIN, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code COLIN, $20 off, swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today.
Yeah, well, I think it's twofold. One, I think Penn State had treated that Oregon game like their Super Bowl. That was going to be a season-defining game because if we beat this team, we finally get that, kind of monkey off our back. We beat a top team who's not as good as they had been in theory because they're much younger. We should win this game. It's at night. And then they lose. So the way they had built the schedule leading into that game was a joke, right? They were playing FIU, Nevada, and then they lose that game in dramatic fashion. Almost felt like they had checked out. So you show up long cross country against my guy Tim Skipper, Fresno State guy that takes over for Deshaun Foster.
Yeah.
Who's Tim Skipper's brother is the running back coach for the Bills. His dad's a longtime NFL coach. Just going to bring them juice. Jerry Neuheisel, who's been at UCLA as a player and a coach forever. They just kind of had a fuck it mentality.
Yeah.
And they unleashed Nico as a runner. And Penn State's just coming off this game that was their Super Bowl, lost it, and let's face it, no chance they had a great week of practice. I don't believe that for a second, which I understand, because when you build something up, anything
with a young
football,
kid with 22-year-olds.
Yeah, so then all of a sudden they were down. If that game was 6 quarters, Penn State would have came back and won the game, right? But they were down, and then all of a sudden their quarterback's pretty overrated. Right, it wasn't his fault they lost the game. The defense was.
But you know what, John? When I watch Drew Allar, there's not a lot of juice to it. He doesn't have great instincts. He's not inspiring. He doesn't have tons of energy. He's just a big, strong kid. But that was a game where you sort of needed your quarterback. Say, fellas, get on my back. We're not.
Nico was doing that. Nico was doing that, running guys over. It was just a fan of football, and I grew up actually a pretty big UCLA fan. My cousin was a walk-on there in the late 90s and early 2000s. That had to be the coolest UCLA moment in football in 10, 15 years.
Well, remember when they came back
Josh Rosen
and
beat A&M?
Yep. Remember they came back at halftime. Similarly, not a lot of fans in the stands, and they beat Texas A&M, and it was like 44-41. It was just wild football game. But I don't know. I like James Franklin, but I think he's a great energy guy and a great recruiter. But
I think it's over after that moment. I mean, it's one thing to lose to Oregon, which it sucks because he's lost that game a lot. But they lose in overtime. They're clearly right there. They were just in the Final Four. But you can't lose to UCLA as a 25. That is, I think USC losing to Harbaugh and Stanford was more out of left field. Right, that was in the peak of the Harbaugh, the dynasty. Stanford was an embarrassment. I think they had just been 1-11. And Tavita Pritchard, they were 40-point underdogs. This might even be crazier, though, because of the hype that was around this team. Even though they just lost to Oregon, I didn't think maybe they would cover because it was 25 points. But if you said, what would you guess the score? 45-25 or something?
Yeah.
Colin, Penn State, Jim Knowles, the guy that they took from Ohio State, is the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. That's what Penn State just paid the defensive coordinator to come. UCLA had scored 57 points to start the season. They just scored 42. They scored 57 points. Nico had become kind of a running joke. Like, he left all this money at Tennessee to come to this bad program. And you talk about inspiring, like how many runs he's just running over guys. He looked like Cam Newton meets Lamar Jackson. He was... If he had played like that over the course early on with UCLA, they clearly would have been in more games. It was just, to me, there was the human element too. I love Tim Skipper. I've known him forever, but seeing Rick Neuheisel, who had coached at UCLA, watching his son, who had played there and now as an assistant coach, calling plays. Jerry Neuheisel found out he was calling plays like Tuesday night. It's been very chaotic.
2 practices. Yeah.
It's been very chaotic in that program. The coaching staff probably includes like 7 total coaches right now. The Rose Bowl, it feels like they've sold signage all over the place because they know people won't show up. The whole thing's boarded off. Remember those old Raider games and 20 years ago that would used to be blacked out? Mount Davis was all tarped off. That's what the Rose Bowl feels like. If buyouts did not exist, I would say if you told me James Franklin was fired this morning, I would have believed you. But obviously the buyouts, the $50 million, it does feel like it's at the point in time. Like I saw someone comparing it to Calipari. Calipari eventually just kind of leaves. James Franklin, it's kind of like John Harbaugh. Like if this no one thinks John Harbaugh, or when people say it was a time for Mike Tomlin. These guys are bad coaches. You put James Franklin at Florida, he'd be fine. He'd win. Is he Saban or Kirby? No. But maybe it's just run its course. He's been there 12 years, and the resume speaks for itself. Last year was his opportunity, and Aller throws that ball across his body, and they lose to Notre Dame, or else they're in the national championship.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the Calipari comp is spot on is that, John could still coach, but when you're a dominating recruiter, the expectations ramp up because that stuff's now so transparent. There's so many sites, and fans get so worked up, the expectations ramp up. Mark Fuel has told me that the great thing about Gonzaga, he goes, I can get 3-star recruits. He goes, if I went to UCLA and I recruited the exact same class I did at Gonzaga, I'd get heat. And he goes, yeah, but that's our system. It works for our system and our players, and we keep getting to, the tournament and winning games. You go to these big schools, fans pay attention to that recruiting, and they go crazy when you get it, but then you got to win all these games.
Chris Peterson's a great example, right? The team he had at Boise, if he had at UCLA or he had at Washington, they would have
get crushed.
But they would have they would have loved the team, but they would have hated the classes as the kids were coming.
That's right.
They'd be like, Kellen Moore, we don't want this guy as our quarterback. We want Arch Manning.
One more college topic. Florida beat Texas. Billy Napier, every time you think he's done, he pulls one out. They beat Texas and Arch Manning 29-21. So listen, they have 4 new offensive linemen at Texas. The pass protection's not great. But I got to tell you, I sat there and watched Arch Manning. He holds on to the ball way too long, and he doesn't have a great instinctive feel. When I watched him this weekend, there were a couple moments, John, where I thought the game was in his head. Like he double pumped on stuff, or he looked almost mechanical. He was afraid to take a big shot down the field. And, I don't want to be too harsh. I'm not sure Arch Manning, there were some when he came out that said he went to a small school, he dominated average competition. But I've not really seen, he's got he moves well, he's got the body, he's got the name, but there is something to be said about, he's still young, there's an it. Some guys you get them the ball and there's a confidence and there's an it. This Texas team, the Sark, for all the criticism, he wins a lot of games. Yeah. They're not a good football team now.
Well, I think if you go back 15, 20 years ago, a guy like Arch gets several seasons. I think in the day and age where you're paying so much money to individual players, I think his spot's in major jeopardy in 2026. You just pay too much for the roster to leave it in the chance of, seems like a good guy. Obviously, his uncles are legends. Like, this isn't Peyton or Eli's son. This is Cooper's.
Yeah.
And if you he threw a beautiful, deep bomb for a touchdown. You remove that play. I thought he was mostly atrocious yesterday.
Yes. Yeah.
And they played Florida. They didn't just play, Georgia or Bama. So they still, A&M looks excellent. And, Elko is known now with Saban retiring right there with Kirby as the best defensive coordinator in the country. Yeah. So this could get even weirder. And it's they're kind of a transition year. There are no transition years anymore at the top programs with the money. Ask Oregon. Yeah. We're in a transition year. We bought it and we're moving. And
Oregon had to replace. They had to replace 11 offensive starters. Oregon, and they're great.
So to me, I would say Arch's position's in major jeopardy in 2026 because their mentality, wouldn't you agree, with the amount of money you're paying for a roster and a coaching staff, and the transfer portal now is to compete for national championships every single year, and you don't get a 3-year runway. The Drew Allar experience, that this is his 3rd year, pretty rare. But by his 2nd year, they were in basically the Final Four. I don't know that Arch is getting a 2nd year. And I bet there would be some people that said, well, what if we had transitioned last year? There are people in Penn State saying, we shouldn't have let the backup go to Missouri. We should have gone with that guy over Drew Allar. But these are the type questions you ask when you're at the top programs and you have access to all the sweet players, right? So if they go 8-4 and he continues to look like this, I just don't see him as a quarterback in 2026. I really don't. And that's just how this thing works. It's because you basically can cut a guy / move on from a guy, force him out. Remember a couple years ago at Ohio State when they basically blamed it all on Kyle McCord? It's different because McCord's last name is not Manning. But again, this pretty cutthroat now. You hear these Lane Kiffin. It's become very transactional. You either get it done or you're done. And they're like, Kyle McCord, they blamed everything on Kyle McCord for losing to Michigan. Ironically, they lost to Michigan again. Now, granted, that they won the national championship with Will Howard. but they just kind of force you out. It's not like Arch, other people would want him, I'm sure, but his arm talent. There was a throw that Lagway made, a deep bomb down the middle, and you just went, God, the physical attributes on this kid are eye-opening. And then you watch Arch. You said he was a good runner. They ran a couple like quarterback powers for him. He's okay. I mean, he's not Cam Newton or Lamar Jackson. So his athleticism, he can't just take over that way. He's like Drew Allar. He can move a little bit and he can bust off some runs, but I wouldn't call him a runner. And then watching the arm, he misses a lot of layups too. That's part of the problem. So the layups, and Sark's getting guys open.
Yeah, Sark's always gotten guys open, and he not only misses layups, but when you watch him sometimes, you're not quite sure he's got the right arm angle or the mechanics. Like, some of it looks bad. It just doesn't look right. It's again, Dante Moore can spin it. He can miss, and you're like, like Sam Darnold could throw a pick, and you still like the delivery, you like the velocity. Like, I don't know. I look at it and I'm like,
if his name was Arch Middlekauff and he was just a 5-star normal quarterback, not famous last name, is he benched right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
All of our odds are presented by Hard Rock Bet, a new and great partner at the Volume. Let's talk Monday Night Football. Kansas City -3.5 at Jacksonville. So Jacksonville's probably the weakest home field advantage in the league. I don't trust them in big spots, and Trevor Lawrence is always good for a bad pick. I think I would take Kansas City in this. It's one thing to say Kansas City just came off this impressive win over Baltimore, but we watched Baltimore get housed today at home by Houston. So I don't think it was a big win for Kansas City. I think by the third quarter, they were on cruise control. But my takeaway is adding Xavier Worthy opens up the underneath routes for them. I think I'd probably take Kansas City to cover, but because they don't have a run game, if they do lead, it is hard for Kansas City to eat the clock up and kind of just squeeze you to death, which gives Jacksonville a chance for a backdoor cover. But their home field's not much of a home field. I'll take the Chiefs by a touchdown. What say you?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement here. I think Kansas City's got a little, when you have the success they do, almost like the Kevin Durant Warriors, like they need extra motivation sometimes. It's not just the slow start kind of woke them up, but now the Chargers have all these injuries. They're not going to look the same missing their tackles.
Yeah, Chargers are a mess.
The Broncos are clearly still figuring it out. You got the Ravens now imploding. You think Kansas City's losing sleep over Aaron Rodgers? So the AFC, the Bills, they played them a million times. They beat them every time that mattered in the playoffs. They're not intimidated to go to Buffalo. I think Kansas City now looks at the AFC, goes, God, we just win a couple games. We're right back in it. This is still our conference.
I think the Denver win helps the Chiefs side. They watch that game, and they're all in their hotel room tonight in Jacksonville going, guys, forget the Chargers and the Raiders. We got to keep up with Denver.
So here's the thing. Jacksonville's defense is clearly pretty good.
Yes.
That unit is solid. The Trevor Lawrence thing, I don't see. I wanted to believe a couple years ago. I'm completely out. You got Brian Thomas is having a weird year. He's banged up. Travis Hunter's been just like MIA. It's just not really working out for what they give him. I love Spags in this spot against Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen's a good offensive coordinator. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence, even last week against Robert Saleh, wasn't that good. To me, this got like a 20-10 type feel. Kind of ugly. That's how the Chiefs like to play.